Imagine the Pentagon in the US got attacked by a foreign nation today, by Mexico, for example. Well, the equivalent. Today, Israel launched devastating airstrikes on Syria's defense ministry headquarters in Damascus, the Syrian capital, killing 3 and injuring 34. Why? Let's get the full details, right? Let's get the full context. Well, Israel says they bombed the military HQ of its neighboring state to warn the Syrian government to protect the Druze community in southern Syria. Bro, imagine Mexico bombed the Pentagon as a warning to Trump's administration not to use deadly force against the LA rioters in Los Angeles. That's the news. Israel bombed the Ministry of Defense. Now for the geopolitical analysis, unbiased and without the Western spin. I can't find any unbiased sources at the moment. Go to Sky News, go to BBC. They're all talking about the Druze community. Bro, that's the Israeli wedge that they're trying to use. Anyway, we'll get into it. This is what you won't get elsewhere, and certainly not in 10 minutes. And I'm ready to deliver it to you. The research is done. Here are the facts. This attack is Israel manufacturing chaos to justify prolonged occupation in southern Syria. It's a message to the Syrian state saying, back off, don't send troops to the south. We, the Israelis, will use the Druze-Bedouin conflict to stay in South Syria. We, the Israelis, will have control over everything south of Damascus, and don't you dare try to stop us. Don't you dare try to send troops south to hold your own sovereign territory. It was promised to me in a vision to my great-great-grandpappy 5,000 years ago, so I need to be here to, establish the promised buffer zone. To make, that last part obviously is not actual fact. Anyway, to make sure Syria gets the message that southern Syria is not to be held by Syria, Israel bombed the Syrian Ministry of Defense, the equivalent of the Pentagon, the military HQ of the state. It's a warning shot across the bow. They also bombed in the vicinity of the presidential palace, excuse me. Syria has no air defense batteries, even less than Iran did, and Iran lost control of their skies during the 12-day war. So, of course, Syria cannot ward off these bombing strikes, airstrikes by the Israeli defense forces, Israeli air forces. Excuse me, sorry, I'm tripping up, but you know my style. You know my style. The truth, uncut, usually single take. So bear with me, guys. So these attacks too are a warning. The attacks near the presidential palace, saying we can get to you anytime, so don't step out of line. As you'll know if you've been following my coverage, guys, Syria's new government, Al-Hukumatul Inqadus Suriya, the Syrian salvation government, salvation, like to lift the population out of the depths it is in. The Syrian Salvation Government has been working hard to stabilize the nation. They've been making progress. Listen to Richard Medhurst, who called the Shahada on a white flag a terrorist symbol. Listen to George Galloway on the topic of Syria, and you'll get a distorted view because they're activists, not analysts. Their pro-Palestine work is impressive. They're activists after all. But on Syria, just because it's moved from Iran and Russia aligned to Turkey aligned, which means, because Turkey is in NATO, which means partially Western aligned, they're not having it. They're very upset. They'd rather Bashar al-Assad, I suppose. So you can't really rely on them for the unbiased analysis, even though they're excellent activists in other fields. But listening to my coverage will net you the analysis without the bias, and I can back it up, and you can look up what I claim. You can look up the sources. You can ask for sources, though I don't always have time to give them. But you can see that I am not making this stuff up, and I'm not putting a spin on it. So let's get back to the news. What Syria's government was doing was stabilizing. Ahmed al-Sharra's government was working hard to lift the state back up, to bring prosperity to its people by rebuilding the shattered institutions and collapsed economies. Don't take my word for it. Look at the objective information coming out of Syria. Look at the population of Syria. Look at what they're able to do. Investments coming into the country. Banks are opening up. Exchange centers are opening up for currency exchanges. Businesses are thriving compared to the 15-year civil war. But these things take time to stabilize and for the institutions to be rebuilt, the government institutions. And Israel was seeing too much progress too fast. Remember, I remind you, Israel was happy with Syria under Assad because Syria at the time was a balkanized mess. Yes, a fragment of it was Iran aligned, but hear me out. It was a fragmented, shell of a nation. The Kurds in the northeast, backed by the US, of course, the US is there. Guess why? It's not even a meme. The oil is there, so the US was there, backing the Syrian separatists, the Kurdish separatists. Sorry, damn it. I went a full day of work today. It was very intense, so I'm a bit exhausted. Excuse me. North Syrian, sorry, so the Kurds held the northeast. Then the North Syrian forces were in the northwest, essentially. No surprises there. Then the North Syrian forces aligned to Turkey. And the capital, Damascus, was under Assad, used basically as a pit stop by Iran to resupply the Lebanese paramilitary in South Lebanon. Now, Iran has lost that pit stop, and now Syria is much more unified because the North Syrian forces came down, took the capital, and the Kurdish separatists in the northeast agreed to lay down their arms and join the Salvation Government. They agreed to take a seat at the government. Go back to my videos on TikTok, scroll like a madman, and you'll eventually reach when Syria was going through its the end of its civil war. You'll see I was giving the exact analysis I'm giving today, no and ifs or buts, and I said at the time the Americans will cause problems in the northeast, and they did, but now they're moving away. And the Israelis will cause problems in the southwest, and the rest of the country will try to unify, and Israel will try and stop them. That's exactly what's happening now. Assad has been toppled, and minorities are not being hunted down. It has to be pointed out by the North Syrian forces that have taken the capital and now rule the country. And Israel is worried. Why are they not hunting down their enemies, right? Why are they unifying Syria? Why are the Kurds unifying? A unified, prosperous, Turkey-backed, stable, citizens, wealthy Syria, that's bad news for the Israeli state, guys. Because Israel knows the sentiment of the citizens of such a Syrian state. They would hate the Israeli state due to their actions in historic Palestine, alongside basically everything else they do. They defend themselves thousands of miles this way, thousands of miles that way. G-side is not a problem, it's self-defense somehow. And if the Syrians in a prosperous, stabilized Syria in the future got a chance, they would fight Israel head on. And Israel know this. So Israel needs to hold the south. They need to keep the country of Syria destabilized from the inside. They need to keep hitting government forces so they cannot stabilize the state. And very usefully, Israel has found the perfect wedge, the perfect minority to wield as a weapon against the Syrian state, the Druze in the south. Even the Druze don't want Israel's help. But it only takes a handful of individuals, to quote George Galloway, useful idiots, convinced by the outside that they can attain wealth or power or riches or liberation, whatever. It only takes a few to keep the fighting going and the fires burning. And in this case here, in southern Syria too, some of the Druze, under a faction that seems to be happy taking Israeli support to fight the Syrian state, those Druze are being given protection by Israel. And the icing on this ridiculous cake, the US has now just made a statement in the last hour. State Department spokeswoman Tammy Bruce says, first of all, I thought Bruce was a man's name and a first name. Anyway, Tammy Bruce says, quote, "We are calling on the Syrian government to withdraw their military in order to allow all sides to be able to de-escalate." Bruce said in an interview with Fox News, basically, that Syria, the US has called on Syria to withdraw from South Syria, not Israel, the foreign entity, in order for all sides to de-escalate. As I keep saying, strength is the only language so far shown to be understood by the West. Oof. Iran perfectly demonstrated that. For better or worse, I'm not taking sides, but Iran demonstrated that strength is a language that the West understands. But for Syria, fresh out of a 15-year civil war, still trying to lift itself up, for God's sake, strength is not something they have. Time will tell how things turn out. And now you know the geopolitics of the situation. I'll keep reporting to you the news and the analysis, unbiased and without the Western spin. I'm Mahfouz, and I'll see you on the next one.